Welcome back to Tina Romance Library, where powerful alphas fall hard, and the women they underestimate change everything. Every story here is complete, immersive, and emotion-driven. No cliffhangers, no rushed endings, just full romances you can sink into. So if you love possessive alphas, strong heroines who don't beg, slow burn tension, emotional payoffs, and stories that actually finish, you're in the right place. I need you to join the pack right now by subscribing. Leave a like if you enjoy immersive romance, and settle in because once the story begins, we don't stop until the ending. Now, let's get into it. You need to understand something right from the start. I wasn't supposed to matter. Not in the grand scheme of things. Not in the hierarchy that governs our world. And certainly not to someone like him. I'm an Omega. And before you start painting some romantic picture in your head about what that means, let me tell you the truth they don't put in the fairy tales. Being an Omega in a world run by alphas means you learn real quick how to make yourself small, how to tuck your scent in tight, how to move through spaces like you're made of smoke and shadow, there but not really there, present but never seen. I got good at it, being invisible, I mean. Every night for 3 years I stood on scaffolding 40 stories above the city streets, squeegee in hand, watching my own reflection slide across the glass panels of Sterling Tower. That building, God, you should see it. All steel and ambition, cutting into the sky like a blade, every window gleaming with the kind of wealth that makes you forget people like me exist. Inside those walls, alphas in $1,000 suits made deals that shaped territories. They drank champagne that cost more than my monthly rent. They moved through those pristine halls like they owned the very air, and maybe they did. I cleaned their windows. From the outside, always from the outside, suspended on platforms that swayed with every gust of wind, my fingers numb even through my gloves during winter months, my muscles aching by the time the sun came up. I'd watch them through the glass powerful wolves who would never think to look at the smudge on their perfect view, never think that smudge had a name, had a heartbeat, had dreams she'd long since learned to stop dreaming. That was my life. Invisible, safe, survivable. I told myself I was content with it. I told myself that being unseen was its own kind of power, that staying off the radar meant staying alive, staying whole, staying free from the complications that came with being noticed by wolves who saw Omegas as possessions rather than people. I watched the city wake up every morning from my perch in the sky, and I told myself this was enough. I was lying, of course, but lies we tell ourselves are sometimes the only thing standing between us and breaking completely. This story, my story, it begins with a fall. But not mine. It begins the night the most powerful alpha in the city fell from grace, and somehow, impossibly, crashed into my invisible life with enough force to shatter everything I thought I knew about staying hidden. It begins with blood on pristine marble, with amber eyes finding mine through bulletproof glass, with a mate bond I didn't ask for snapping into place like a noose, like a lifeline, like fate itself reaching down and saying, "Sorry, sweetheart, but your time being invisible just ran out." I didn't know that night would bind me to the most dangerous alpha alive. I didn't know that being seen by him would mean being hunted by everyone else. I didn't know that loving him would feel like falling and flying at the exact same time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the night my squeegee scraped across a window on the 42nd floor, and I looked through the glass to see him bleeding, desperate, and looking right at me like I was the only person in the world who could save him. Turns out, I was. The harness dug into my ribs like it always did at hour 6 of an 8-hour shift. 38 floors up, the wind didn't just blow, it attacked. It came at you from angles that didn't make sense, whipping around the corners of Sterling Tower with enough force to send the platform swaying, my stomach lurching even though I'd done this 1,000 times. My muscles had that deep, bone-tired ache that comes from holding your body tense for hours, from fighting gravity and wind and your own exhaustion just to drag a squeegee across glass that would be dirty again in a week. February in the city meant cold that bit through 3 layers and found your skin anyway. My fingers were numb inside my gloves, and I'd lost feeling in my toes an hour ago. I should have been thinking about my bed, about the hot shower waiting for me, about whether I had enough left in my account to splurge on real coffee instead of the instant stuff. I should have been thinking about anything else. But something had shifted in the air around me, and my wolf, my small, quiet Omega wolf that I kept locked down so tight she barely whispered anymore, she was stirring. Pacing, restless in a way that made my skin prickle and my heart beat just a little too fast. Power. That's what I was sensing. Raw, undiluted alpha power somewhere above me, bleeding through the steel and glass like heat through a window. It made my wolf want to tuck her tail and roll over, made that omega part of me that I hated want to bare my throat, but it also made something else happen, something I didn't have words for. A pull, faint but insistent, like a string tied around my ribs, tugging upward. I shook my head, sprayed more solution on the glass, dragged the squeegee down in a practiced arc that left the window perfectly clear. 17 more panels on this level, then I could descend to 37 and start the whole process over. Risking your life for streak-free glass, I muttered to myself, my breath fogging in the cold air. Really living the dream, Sage. That's what I did up here, talked to myself. Made stupid jokes that no one else would hear, pretended that this job was a choice rather than the only option available to an unmated omega with no pack and no connections. Humor was better than the alternative, which was thinking too hard about how one equipment failure, one frayed cable, one moment of bad luck stood between me and a very quick trip to the pavement. I moved to the next panel, clipped my safety line to the rail, and that's when I heard it. The balcony door sliding open somewhere above me. My hands stilled on the squeegee. The wind carried voices down to me, muffled but distinct enough to make my wolf freeze. Every sense suddenly sharp and focused. Told you to wait inside. A woman's voice. Cold, controlled. The kind of voice that was used to being obeyed without question. I wanted to see the city. A child. Young, maybe 7 or 8. Male. Excited despite the woman's obvious displeasure. My heart kicked against my ribs. I knew that voice. Everyone who worked in or around Sterling Tower knew that voice, even if we'd never met the kid who owned it. Leo Sterling, the alpha heir. The miracle child born to Cale Sterling after his mate died, raised by his father and his father's new wife in the penthouse that crowned this entire gleaming monument to power. I should have moved. Should have descended right then, gotten myself out of earshot, because Omegas, who overheard things they shouldn't, didn't tend to have long careers or long lives. But I was 40 stories up on a swaying platform with 17 more windows to clean, and moving meant making noise, meant drawing attention to the fact that I was here at all. So I did what I always did. I made myself smaller, stilled my breathing, and prayed to whatever gods looked after invisible omegas that they'd go back inside before saying anything that would make me a liability. The city looks the same as it always does. The woman Vanessa Sterling, I realized. The stepmother sounded bored, impatient. Come away from the edge. But the lights. Leo. Sharp now. A warning. The boy went quiet. I could almost feel his disappointment from here, and something in my chest twisted. I remembered being that age. Remembered what it felt like to have excitement crushed under someone else's coldness. Your father spoils you, Vanessa said, and her voice had changed. Gone softer, almost contemplative, but in a way that made my wolf bare her teeth. He sees your mother in you. Did you know that? I miss her, Leo said quietly. I wish I remembered her better. Yes, well, memory is a funny thing. Silence stretched out, filled only by the wind howling around the tower's edge. I should have been moving away, but something kept me frozen. Some instinct that didn't make sense, screaming at me to pay attention, to stay alert, to... Do you know what happens to children who ask too many questions, Leo? The temperature in the air seemed to drop 20 degrees. My hands tightened on the squeegee until my knuckles went white under my gloves. What do you mean? The boy's voice had gotten smaller, uncertain. I mean, your father is tired. I mean, you remind him of pain he'd rather forget. I mean... She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried such casual cruelty that ice shot down my spine. I mean, accidents happen all the time, don't they? Even to carefully watch children. I don't understand. Leo's words trembled now. You will. Footsteps, moving toward the balcony edge, toward where a 7-year-old boy stood between his stepmother and a 42-story drop. My wolf exploded inside me. Not with fear, with rage. With an instinct so powerful it blacked out every survival mechanism I'd spent years building. I didn't know this child. He was the heir to an empire that ground people like me under its heel, without a second thought. His father probably didn't even know I existed. None of that mattered. No! Leo's scream cut through the night. I looked up just in time to see his small body pitch forward over the balcony rail, arms windmilling, terror written across features too young to understand that his stepmother had just tried to murder him. Time didn't slow down. That's what they always say in stories, that everything goes into slow motion, but that's bullshit. Time sped up. It became a freight train, and I was standing on the tracks watching it barrel toward me with the absolute certainty that the next 3 seconds would either save a life or end mine. I didn't think. I moved. My hands released the squeegee, heard it clatter against the platform. I grabbed the safety harness release, yanked it free with a violence that would have made my supervisor scream. The platform was 12 feet to my left. Leo was falling 8 feet to my right. The laws of physics said I couldn't reach him. My wolf didn't give a damn about physics. I jumped, launched myself off the platform with every ounce of strength in my legs, arms outstretched, heart hammering so hard it felt like it would break through my ribs. The harness cable went taut behind me, jerking me sideways in midair, and for one crystalline moment I was suspended in nothing. 42 stories of empty air beneath me, the city lights spreading out like scattered diamonds, the wind screaming in my ears. My fingers closed around small arms. Got him. The weight hit me like a sledgehammer, momentum trying to rip him from my grasp. My shoulders screamed in protest. The harness cable sang with tension, and somewhere in the back of my mind I knew I'd just put more stress on that line than it was ever rated for. If it snapped now, we'd both fall. If the anchor point gave way, we'd both die. I didn't care. I pulled Leo against my chest, wrapped both arms around him, tucked his face against my shoulder so he wouldn't see how far we were from solid ground, and held on while my wolf howled in triumph and terror. "I've got you," I gasped against his hair. "I've got you. You're safe. I've got you." He was sobbing, tiny body shaking so hard I could feel it through all our layers, his small hands fisted in my jacket with desperate strength. "Don't let go," he whimpered. "Please don't let go. Never." The word came out fierce, absolute, a promise I had no business making. "I will never let you go." We hung there in the wind and darkness, a Omega window cleaner and an Alpha air, bound together by violence and chance and something that felt bigger than both. My muscles trembled with the strain of holding us both. The harness cut into my ribs with bruising force. Blood roared in my ears. And somewhere far above us, I heard a balcony door slide shut with a quiet click that sounded like a death sentence. The pain didn't hit right away. First came the adrenaline crash, that sick drop in your stomach when your body realizes what you just did, what you just survived, and decides to remind you that you're still very much mortal. Then came the shaking, violent tremors that started in my hands and spread through my whole body until my teeth were chattering, and I couldn't tell if it was shock or cold or both. Then came the pain. My right shoulder felt like someone had taken a blowtorch to the joint. Every breath sent fire radiating down my arm, across my back, into my chest. The harness had caught us. Thank God. Thank fate. Thank whatever forces in the universe decided we deserved another handful of heartbeats, but the sudden stop had done something terrible to my shoulder. Torn something. Dislocated something. I didn't know the medical terminology and didn't care. All I knew was that agony pulsed through me with every beat of my heart, and I had to swallow back the scream building in my throat because Leo was still crying, still clinging to me, and he needed me to be strong. "Are we going to fall?" His voice was so small, muffled against my jacket. "No, baby. No, we're not going to fall." I forced the words out steady, even though I was pretty sure I was going to pass out. "The harness is holding. We're safe now." "Lee." We weren't safe. We were dangling 42 stories up. My equipment had just been subjected to stresses it was never designed to handle, and somewhere above us was a woman who'd just tried to murder the child in my arms. But Leo didn't need truth right now. He needed comfort. "I'm scared," he whispered. "I know. I'm scared too." That at least was honest. But you know what? Being scared just means we're smart enough to understand the situation. It doesn't mean we can't handle it. My dad says that too. Something in my chest clenched at the mention of his father. Cale Sterling, the alpha who ruled this city's wolf population with absolute authority. The male who would, in a matter of minutes, find out that his son had nearly died and that an Omega window cleaner had caught him. I had no illusions about how that was going to go. "Your dad sounds like a smart man," I managed. "Let's get you back to him, okay? I need you to hold on tight to me. Can you do that?" Leo's arms tightened around my neck in answer. The movement jostled my shoulder, and I couldn't quite swallow the gasp of pain. "Are you hurt?" He pulled back just enough to look at me, and even in the darkness I could see his eyes amber, like honey and gold, filled with worry that no 7-year-old should have to carry. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just a little sore. Nothing that won't heal." Another lie. Omega's healed fast, but I could feel that something in my shoulder was wrong in a way that might need more than accelerated healing to fix. And even if my body recovered, I wasn't sure the rest of me would. I'd just jumped off a platform without thinking, had just intervened in what looked like an attempted murder, had just saved the life of the most important child in the city's supernatural hierarchy. I was so screwed. "Okay," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "We're going to swing over to the building. I'm going to get us to the nearest balcony, and then we're going to get you inside where it's warm. Sound good?" Leo nodded against my shoulder. Trusting. Completely, devastatingly trusting in a way that made me want to cry and scream at the same time. I used my good arm to grab the cable, started pulling us toward the tower. Every movement was agony. My shoulder was useless, my muscles shaking with exhaustion and shock. But I'd promised this child he was safe, and I'd die before I broke that promise. It took forever, seconds that felt like hours. But finally, my feet touched the railing of a balcony on the 41st floor. I managed to get us over. Managed to lower Leo to solid ground. Managed to collapse against the glass door with my vision swimming and my shoulder screaming. "We need to get inside," I panted. "Can you see if the door opens?" Leo tried the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. Because tonight wasn't quite nightmarish enough. I was trying to figure out our next move when I felt it. Power, raw and absolute, rolling toward us like a tsunami. The same presence I'd sensed earlier, but now it was close, getting closer, and it made my wolf do something she'd never done before. She surged forward, pressing against my skin, desperate to get out, desperate to submit or fight or run. I couldn't tell which. The balcony door slammed open from the inside. A man filled the doorway. Tall at least 6'4", with shoulders that belonged on someone who fought for a living. Dark hair, darker eyes, a face that might have been handsome if it wasn't currently twisted with fury and fear. He wore a suit that probably cost more than I made in a year, but he'd torn the tie off and the top buttons were undone, like he'd been running. His scent hit me like a physical force. Cedar and smoke and something wild. Something that belonged to forests and moonlight and hunts that ended in blood. It poured over me, into me, filled my lungs and soaked into my skin. And my wolf screamed. Not in fear. In recognition. No. No. No, 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 no. Leo. The man, and I knew who he was now. Had seen his face in newspapers and on screens. Dominic Sterling, Cale's younger brother, the terror of the business world, the alpha who negotiated treaties and broke companies with equal ease, dropped to his knees and pulled the boy into his arms. "Christ, Leo, are you hurt? Talk to me." "Uncle Dom!" Leo burst into fresh sobs and buried his face in Dominic's chest. "She pushed me. Vanessa pushed me and I was falling and... Shh, I've got you. You're safe now." Dominic's voice was rough, shaking with emotion I hadn't expected from someone with his reputation. His hands ran over Leo, checking for injuries with a thoroughness that spoke of genuine care. Then his eyes lifted to me. Our gazes met. Heat exploded in my chest. Not metaphorical heat, actual burning warmth that spread from my sternum outward, racing down my arms, up my throat, pooling low in my belly. The world tilted sideways, and for a moment all I could see were his eyes, dark brown shot through with gold, widening with the same shock I was feeling. The mate bond snapped into place between us like a chain forged in fire. I felt him, not just his presence, but him, his wolf prowling beneath his skin, his heartbeat syncing with mine, his shock and his rage and his desperate relief over Leo, all of it flooding through a connection I'd never wanted, never asked for, never believed would happen to someone like me. No. I tried to push the bond away, tried to shove that burning warmth back down, but it was like trying to unring a bell. It was done. Fate, or the moon, or whatever cosmic force governed these things, had decided that this alpha, this powerful, dangerous, completely wrong alpha was mine. And from the way he was staring at me, from the way his nostrils flared as he scented me even through the wind and cold, he knew it too. "Who are you?" His voice came out rough, barely controlled. "Nobody," I said, and my own voice shook. "I'm nobody. Don't lie to me." He rose to his feet in one fluid movement, keeping Leo tucked against his side. "What happened here?" I opened my mouth to answer, to explain, but I didn't get the chance. "Dominic! Thank God you're here!" Vanessa's voice rang out from somewhere inside. She appeared behind him, perfectly composed except for the calculated distress on her face. It was horrible that Omega. She tried to take Leo. My blood turned to ice. "What?" Dominic's voice went deadly soft. "I came out to check on Leo and she was there, trying to lure him to the edge. I screamed and she jumped with him. I thought she was going to kill him." "That's not what happened." My words came out too sharp, too defensive. "She's lying." "Am I?" Vanessa's eyes met mine, and they were cold as winter. "Or are you trying to cover up your crime?" Everyone knows Omegas can become obsessed with alpha children. It's a documented phenomenon. I saved him. I looked at Dominic, willing him to hear the truth in my voice. She pushed him. I caught him. "Check the security footage if you don't believe me." "The cameras on that balcony malfunctioned earlier today," Vanessa said smoothly. Such unfortunate timing. Of course they had. She'd planned this, planned all of it. Dominic's jaw clenched. He looked between us, and I could feel his conflict through the bond his wolf was howling at him to trust me, to protect me, to claim me. But his rational mind, his duty to his family, his position, those were warring with instinct. He stepped toward me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to hold his gaze. Close enough that his scent wrapped around me like a blanket and a threat all at once. His hand shot out and gripped my arm. The bond flared white-hot between us. I saw his pupils dilate, saw him suck in a sharp breath. His wolf was right there, pressing against his control, demanding he acknowledge what I was to him. "Tell me the truth," he growled. "I am." I didn't flinch, didn't beg. Didn't drop my eyes like a good little Omega should. I was cleaning windows. I heard her threaten him. I watched her push him. I jumped and caught him. That's the truth. Believe it or don't, I can't control what you choose to see. His fingers tightened on my arm for a moment. Through the bond, I felt his want. His wolf recognized me, was already trying to protect me, to keep me close. But then, his duty won. He released me. Stepped back. The warmth of his touch lingered on my skin like a brand. "Security will take you in for questioning," he said, and his voice was cold now. Professional, like he hadn't just felt what I felt, like the bond between us was something he could just ignore. "Don't leave the building." My heart cracked. I'd known, of course. Known that nothing good could come from a bond with an alpha like him. But feeling him choose duty over instinct, feeling him reject what we were, it hurt worse than my shoulder. "Fine," I said quietly, "but you should know she's going to try again, and next time I won't be there to catch him." I looked past Dominic to where Leo still clung to his uncle's side, those amber eyes wide and frightened and fixed on me. "You're safe now," I told him, and meant it, even if it cost me everything. Then security arrived, and my life as an invisible Omega officially ended. The holding cell was exactly what you'd expect from a building designed for wolves who valued power over mercy concrete walls, fluorescent lights that buzzed with a frequency that made my teeth ache, a metal bench bolted to the floor, and a door with no handle on the inside. They'd taken my harness, my jacket, anything I could potentially use to hurt myself or others, as if I had the energy left to be a threat to anyone. I sat on that bench with my back against the wall, my right arm cradled against my chest, and tried to breathe through pain that was rapidly shifting from acute to excruciating. My shoulder was definitely dislocated, maybe torn. I could feel the wrongness of it, the way the joint sat at an angle that made my stomach turn. Every breath sent fresh waves of agony radiating down my arm. My fingers were starting to tingle, not a good sign, and the swelling was getting worse. But the physical pain was almost a relief compared to the other ache. The bond. I could feel Dominic somewhere in the building above me. Feel his presence like a compass needle pointing north, constant and undeniable. And worse, I could feel his emotions bleeding through the connection we'd both tried to ignore: his confusion, his anger, his guilt, and underneath it all, a want so fierce it made my breath catch. His wolf wanted me, needed me, was probably pacing and snarling and demanding he come back to claim what was his. But the man was stronger than his wolf. The man had duty and family and a lifetime of control, and he'd chosen those things over a bond with an Omega he didn't know, didn't trust, and probably didn't want. I understood. Really, I did. Fate had a sick sense of humor, pairing someone like me with someone like him. I was nobody, a window cleaner with no pack, no status, no place in the hierarchy that governed our world. He was Dominic Sterling, for God's sake. Second son of the most powerful alpha family in the city, enforcer and strategist. The wolf other alphas feared and respected in equal measure. We made no sense. The bond made no sense. And yet my wolf was curled up inside me, whimpering, mourning something we'd barely had, something we'd lost before we could even name it. Fate chose wrong, I whispered to the empty cell. You picked the wrong Omega for him. The words hurt coming out. Admitting defeat always did. But I'd learned a long time ago that fighting reality was a waste of energy better spent on survival. And right now, survival meant accepting that whatever cosmic mistake had bonded me to Dominic Sterling was something neither of us would acknowledge. I'd give my statement. They'd check whatever evidence existed. Either they'd believe me or they wouldn't. Either way, I was getting out of this building and running as far as my legs would carry me, because staying in the same city as your rejected mate was a recipe for madness, and I'd worked too hard to stay sane to throw it away now. The door opened. I didn't have to look up to know who it was. The bond flared hot and bright, my wolf surging forward with desperate hope I immediately crushed down. You need medical attention. Dominic's voice was carefully neutral, but I could hear the strain underneath. I'm fine. You're not fine. Your shoulder is dislocated and you're going into shock. Then dislocate it back. I finally looked at him, kept my face blank even though every cell in my body was screaming at me to go to him. Or don't. Either way, can we get this over with? I'd like to be charged or released before I pass out. He moved into the cell, and I hated how my body responded, heart rate picking up, skin flushing, that traitor warmth spreading through my chest. He'd changed clothes, traded the torn suit for dark jeans and a black shirt that did nothing to hide the muscle underneath. His hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it, and there were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there an hour ago. I need to ask you some questions, he said. Fine. Ask. Walk me through what happened. Everything. So I did. I kept my voice steady, clinical, describing the night like I was narrating someone else's story. The voices on the balcony, Vanessa's threats, Leo's scream, the jump, every detail I could remember, laying them out like evidence because that's what they were. Dominic listened without interrupting. He stood 5 feet away, close enough that I could smell him God, that scent but far enough that we weren't touching. His arms were crossed over his chest, his face unreadable, but through the bond, I could feel his turmoil. His wolf was going insane, demanding he close the distance between us, and the man was holding on to his control by his fingernails. You're saying my brother's wife tried to murder his son, he said when I finished. I'm saying I watched her push a 7-year-old off a balcony, 42 stories up. You can call it whatever you want. Do you understand what you're accusing her of? The implications? Do you understand what I just prevented? I shot back, and couldn't quite keep the anger out of my voice. That child would be dead right now if I hadn't been there. But sure, let's worry about the implications for the woman who tried to kill him. Something flashed in his eyes, approval maybe, or respect, but it was gone before I could name it. Why should I believe you? He asked quietly. I don't know. Why should you? I met his gaze steadily. I'm nobody. She's family. I have nothing to gain and everything to lose by telling this story. She has everything to gain by silencing me. Logically, you should believe her. But you're still telling it, because it's the truth. I straightened, despite the pain it cost me. And because that little boy deserves someone who'll tell the truth, even when it's inconvenient. Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we weren't saying. The bond pulled taut, a string vibrating with tension. I need to reset your shoulder, Dominic said finally. I said I'm fine. You're not fine. You're going into shock, and if we don't relocate that joint soon, you're risking permanent damage. He took a step closer, then another. I can call a medic if you'd prefer. Yes. Say yes. Keep him away from you. No, I heard myself say. No medics. Just do it. He crossed the remaining distance between us, and suddenly he was there, right there, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his body, close enough that every breath pulled his scent deep into my lungs, close enough that the bond went haywire, flooding me with want and need and recognition. This is going to hurt, he warned. Everything hurts. His hands were gentle as he examined my shoulder, fingers probing the injury with a skill that spoke of experience. Every touch sent electricity skating across my skin, made my wolf whine and press closer. On 3, he said, and positioned his hands. 1. He didn't wait for 3, just pulled and rotated in one smooth motion, and the joint popped back into place with a sickening sound that made my vision white out. I didn't scream. Came close, bit down on my lip hard enough to taste blood, but I didn't scream. When my vision cleared, I was slumped forward against Dominic's chest, his arms wrapped around me, holding me upright. My face was pressed against his shirt, and I could feel his heartbeat, fast and hard against my cheek. His hand was in my hair, cradling my head, and he was making a sound low in his chest that was almost a growl, almost a purr, entirely wolf. I've got you, he murmured. I've got you. We should have pulled apart, should have remembered that we were supposed to be pretending the bond didn't exist, should have done 100 things that weren't standing in a holding cell wrapped around each other like we had the right to this kind of contact. Neither of us moved. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Seconds. Minutes. Time felt slippery, irrelevant. All that mattered was his warmth, his strength, the way his wolf was rumbling contentedly now that we were finally touching the way we were meant to. You need to let me go, I whispered eventually. I know. He didn't move. Dominic. Hearing his name seemed to break whatever spell we were under. He pulled back not far, just enough that we weren't plastered against each other anymore, and his hands dropped from my body. I immediately felt the loss, cold rushing in where his warmth had been. His eyes met mine, and they were pure gold now, his wolf riding right at the surface. Tell me something, I said, because if I didn't talk I was going to do something stupid like pull him back. If I were anyone else, if I were an alpha, or a beta, or just another omega without this bond between us, would you believe me? That's not a fair question. It's the only question that matters. I held his gaze. You felt what I felt on that balcony. You know I'm telling the truth. But you can't afford to believe me because it would mean your family is broken in ways you don't want to face. You don't know anything about my family. I know Vanessa disabled the security cameras. I know she got Leo alone on a balcony in the middle of the night. I know she pushed him. I took a breath, pushed through the exhaustion and pain. And I know you know I'm right. He turned away, paced to the far wall, put his back to me. The line of his shoulders was rigid, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Check the rig logs, I said to his back. My harness, the safety cable, everything has sensors that record when they're deployed, what kind of stress they sustain. The data will show the cable going taut at exactly the moment Leo fell. It'll show the angle, the trajectory. Physics doesn't lie, even if people do. He glanced back at me. What else? The squeegee. I dropped it when I jumped. It should still be on the platform. Look at exactly which window I was cleaning when this happened. I was nowhere near that balcony. I would have had to climb up and over just to get to Leo. There would have been marks on the railing from my equipment if I'd done that. You've thought this through. I've had an hour in a concrete box with nothing else to do. I managed something that might have been a smile if everything didn't hurt so much. Besides, I spent 3 years being invisible. You learn to pay attention to details when nobody pays attention to you. Dominic studied me for a long moment. I could feel his mind working through what I'd said, assembling the pieces, seeing the picture they formed. Could feel the exact moment doubt cracked through his loyalty to Vanessa. "If you're telling the truth," he said slowly, "then my nephew is in danger every moment he's in that penthouse with her." "Yes. And if you're lying, then you're the most dangerous person in this building." "Also yes, those are pretty high stakes for someone who claims to be nobody." "I never claimed to be brave." I leaned back against the wall, suddenly exhausted. "I just claimed to be honest." He moved back across the cell, stopped just outside of touching distance. The bond hummed between us, unsatisfied, but no longer painful. "I'm going to check your story," he said. "All of it. The rig logs, the equipment, the timeline. And if anything doesn't match up, it will. If it doesn't," he continued, "then bond or no bond, I will personally ensure you never get within 100 miles of my family again." "And if it does match up?" I asked. "If everything I said is true and you have to face the fact that your sister-in-law tried to murder your nephew, what then?" His jaw tightened. "Then we have a much bigger problem than a rejected mate bond." The words hit harder than they should have. Rejected mate bond. Said out loud like that, casual and matter of fact, like it was already decided, already over before it began. My wolf whimpered. I told her to shut up. "Good to know where I rank," I said lightly. "Somewhere below family political drama, above window cleaning equipment inventory." "That's not—" He stopped, started again. "This isn't about you." "No, it's about a 7-year-old boy who almost died tonight. That's the only thing this should be about." I met his eyes one last time. "So go. Check the logs. Find the truth. And when you do, remember that I told you even when I knew you wouldn't want to hear it." Dominic looked at me for another long moment. Through the bond, I felt his wolf howl in protest at leaving, felt the man's determination override it. Then he turned and walked out of the cell, and I was alone again. But this time, when the door closed behind him, I wasn't entirely sure which one of us was really the one locked up. I must have dozed off. Stupid. Dangerous. The kind of mistake you made when your body hit its limit and dragged you under whether you wanted to go or not. My shoulder throbbed with a deep, sick ache that pulsed in time with my heartbeat, and exhaustion had wrapped around me like a weighted blanket I couldn't kick off. I didn't mean to sleep. Didn't want to be vulnerable in this concrete box where the door had no handle and my only way out depended on someone else's mercy. But my body didn't care what I wanted. The footsteps woke me. Not normal footsteps. Not the heavy tread of security guards, or the purposeful click of someone who had a right to be here. These were soft, careful, the kind of steps someone made when they didn't want to be heard. My eyes snapped open. I didn't move, didn't shift my position on the bench, just let my gaze track toward the door through barely parted lashes. The lock disengaged with a quiet snick. Wrong. That was wrong. Security wouldn't open the door without announcing themselves, wouldn't come alone, wouldn't move with that predatory silence that made every hair on my body stand up. The door swung inward on well-oiled hinges. A man entered. Average height, average build, the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after seeing it. He wore all black tactical gear that didn't carry any identifying marks. And in his hands, catching the fluorescent light as he moved, was a length of wire with wooden handles at each end. Agarrote. Oh God. My wolf exploded inside me, flooding my system with adrenaline that burned away the exhaustion in one brutal surge. Every instinct I had screamed run. But there was nowhere to run. No window to jump through, no platform to escape to. Just 4 concrete walls and a man who'd been sent here to make sure I never left this room alive. I didn't waste time on questions. Didn't ask who sent him or why, or if there was any way to talk my way out of this. I just moved. Rolled off the bench as he lunged, hit the floor hard enough to jar my injured shoulder. Pain exploded white-hot through my arm, but I used it, let it sharpen my focus as I scrambled toward the corner farthest from him. He was faster than I expected. Professional. He cut off my angle, herded me back against the wall, and then the wire was around my throat. The world narrowed to a single point of pressure. The garrote bit into my skin, cutting off air, cutting off blood flow to my brain. I clawed at it, but he'd positioned himself behind me, had all the leverage, and my injured shoulder made me weak on one side. Spots danced across my vision. My lungs burned. This was it. This was how I died. Not falling from a tower or slowly over years of invisibility, but strangled in a concrete box by a man whose face I'd already forgotten. I'm sorry, Leo. I tried. And then, impossibly, my last thought wasn't of the child I'd saved. It was of him. Dominic. Not Dominic Sterling, alpha, and enforcer. Not the man who'd chosen duty over our bond. Just mine. The mate I'd never get to know. The wolf whose presence I could still feel somewhere above me, probably checking rig logs, probably building his case, completely unaware that I was dying 4 floors below him. I'm sorry I wasn't what you needed. The bond flared between us. Not gently, it detonated like a bomb going off in my chest, sending a surge of desperate energy through the connection, a wordless scream that said, dying, help, please. The door didn't just open. It exploded. Metal shrieked. Concrete cracked. The entire frame tore away from the wall in a shower of dust and debris, and through it came Dominic. But not the controlled, composed alpha I'd met on the balcony. This was something primal. Feral. His eyes burned pure gold. His face twisted into a snarl that showed teeth gone sharp, his hands already shifting into claws that could shred steel. His wolf was in complete control. The assassin released me survival instinct, overriding his mission, and tried to run. He made it 3 steps. Dominic hit him like a freight train, moving faster than anything that size had a right to move. One clawed hand closed around the assassin's throat and slammed him into the wall hard enough to crack concrete. The impact drove the air from the man's lungs in a wet whoosh. Who sent you? Dominic's voice came out more growl than words. His wolf riding so close to the surface he was barely human anymore. The assassin's answer was to pull a knife from somewhere on his vest and drive it toward Dominic's ribs. Mistake. Dominic caught his wrist mid-strike, twisted, and the sound of bones breaking was like gunshots in the small space. The knife clattered to the floor. The assassin opened his mouth to scream, and Dominic's other hand, still clawed, still wrong, crushed his windpipe before he could make a sound. I watched the light go out of the assassin's eyes, watched Dominic hold him there against the wall until he was sure, until there was no doubt, no chance he'd get back up. Then he let the body drop and turned to me. Blood spattered his shirt. His chest heaved with breath that came too fast, too harsh. His eyes were still pure gold, still feral, and when they locked on me on the red marks around my throat where the wire had bitten deep, something in them went even more wild. Sage. My name came out broken, raw. I couldn't speak. My throat was on fire, my voice box crushed, and all I could do was stare at him while I tried to remember how to breathe properly. He crossed to me in 2 strides, dropped to his knees in front of where I'd collapsed against the wall. His hands hovered over me, shaking, like he was afraid if he touched me I'd shatter. Let me see. Not a request. His hands went to my throat, tilting my head back with a gentleness that contradicted the violence still thrumming through his body. Fuck, Sage. His thumbs traced the marks. I felt the barely restrained fury in that touch, the way his wolf was screaming for more blood, more violence, more death to pay for what had been done to his mate. Then he leaned in and licked my throat. One long, slow drag of his tongue across the damaged skin, following the line of the wire mark from one side to the other. The gesture was pure wolf, claiming, marking, healing. His saliva carried enzymes that would help the wounds close faster, but that wasn't why he did it. He did it because his wolf demanded it, because I was his and someone had dared to hurt me, and every instinct he had needed to mark me as protected, as claimed, as mine. When he pulled back, his eyes were still gold but more focused now, the man fighting his way back to the surface. Anyone who touches you dies. The words came out absolutely certain. A vow, a promise, a threat to the entire world. Anyone who threatens you, anyone who even looks at you wrong, I will tear them apart. Dominic, my voice came out as barely a whisper, my throat too damaged for more. Don't. He pressed his forehead against mine, his hands framing my face with a tenderness that made my chest ache. Don't tell me this doesn't matter. Don't tell me the bond isn't real. I felt you dying. I felt you calling through the bond and His voice cracked. I'm supposed to be in control. I'm supposed to think clearly, act rationally, put duty first. But all of that disappeared when I felt you in danger. All I could think was get to her, save her, kill anything that threatens her. I'm nobody, I whispered, using the words like a shield. You said it yourself, this is a rejected bond. I was wrong. His thumb traced my cheekbone, his touch reverent. I was a coward and a fool, and I was wrong. You're not nobody. You're mine. The possessiveness in that last word should have scared me. Should have made my independent Omega instincts rear up in protest. Instead, it sent warmth flooding through my chest, my wolf practically purring with satisfaction. Your family can burn. He said it without hesitation. Leo adores you already. Kale will understand once he knows the truth. And Vanessa? His expression went cold. I checked the logs, the camera feeds, the equipment records. You were right about everything. My heart stuttered. You believe me. I believe you. I verified your story, and then I went to confront Vanessa, and while I was doing that, she sent an assassin to kill you. His hands tightened on my face. She just confirmed her guilt and signed her death warrant in one move. Leo is being guarded by 3 of my best wolves right now. No one gets near him without going through them first. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. I should have protected you from the start. Should have trusted the bond, trusted my wolf, trusted you. Instead, I let duty and suspicion blind me, and you almost died because of it. You didn't know. I knew. His voice went rough with self-recrimination. The bond doesn't lie. My wolf knew the moment we touched, and I ignored it, rejected you, and for that, he pressed his lips to my forehead, soft and reverent. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry, Sage. Tears burned behind my eyes. I'd spent the last few hours accepting that this bond was over before it began, that he'd chosen duty over fate, that I'd have to run and spend the rest of my life feeling the phantom pull of a mate I'd never claim. But he was here, kneeling in front of me covered in blood, his wolf still riding close to the surface, looking at me like I was something precious instead of disposable. What happens now? I managed. Now. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Now I finish this. Vanessa tried to kill my nephew and my mate. She doesn't get to walk away from that. Dominic, you don't have to watch. He rose to his feet, offered me his hand. But you're not staying in this building. You're not going anywhere. I can't protect you until every threat is eliminated. I looked at his outstretched hand. Taking it would mean accepting this, accepting him, accepting the bond, accepting a place in a world I'd spent years staying invisible in. I took his hand. His fingers closed around mine, warm and solid and steady. The bond sang between us, finally acknowledged, finally allowed to be what it was meant to be. I need to warn you, I said as he helped me to my feet. I'm not good at this, at being seen, at letting people in, at trusting that I won't wake up and find out this was all a mistake. Good thing I'm patient. He pulled me against his chest, careful of my injured shoulder, and wrapped his arms around me like he was trying to shield me from the entire world. And good thing I'm not going anywhere. His scent surrounded me, cedar and smoke, and something wild, and for the first time since the bond snapped into place, I let myself sink into it. Let myself feel the rightness of being held by him, protected by him, claimed by him. They're going to come after us, I murmured against his chest. Vanessa won't be the only one who wants me gone. Other wolves won't accept an Omega mated to a Sterling. Let them try. His voice rumbled through his chest, dark and promising. I killed the last threat. I'll kill the next one too. I'll kill every single person who tries to take you from me. Possessive, violent, absolutely certain. My wolf loved every word of it. You're kind of intense, you know that? I said. I felt his lips curve against my hair. You saved my nephew's life. You survived an assassination attempt. You stood in front of me and told me the truth even when you knew I didn't want to hear it. Trust me, sweetheart. You can handle intense. Maybe I could. Maybe being invisible for so long had just been preparation for this, for being seen by someone who looked at me like I was worth protecting, worth claiming, worth keeping. Take me somewhere safe, I whispered, and then tell me everything. About your family, about what happens next, about what being yours actually means. His arms tightened around me. Gladly. But first, he pulled back just enough to look at me, and his eyes had finally faded from gold back to brown. First, I need you to do something for me. What? Don't run. His hand came up to cut my cheek, his thumb brushing across my lips. When this gets complicated, and it will get complicated, don't run. Fight with me, argue with me, tell me when I'm being an overbearing alpha asshole. But don't run, promise me. I should have said no. Should have kept an escape route open, because that's what you did when you were an Omega with no pack and no safety net. But looking into his eyes, feeling the steady beat of his heart against mine, I found myself nodding. I promise. The smile that crossed his face was fierce and beautiful and entirely mine. Good. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, my cheek, the corner of my mouth. Because you're stuck with me now, Sage. For better or worse, you're mine, and I don't give up what's mine. Possessive alpha, I murmured, but there was no heat in it. You're possessive alpha, he corrected. And despite everything, the pain, the fear, the violence, the uncertainty of what came next, I smiled. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I was seen, claimed, protected. I was his. Dominic's safe house wasn't what I expected. I'd pictured something sterile and temporary, a hotel suite maybe, or a corporate apartment with generic furniture and no personality. Instead, he brought me to a penthouse across the city, all dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glittering sprawl below, and a space that felt lived in despite its luxury. Books on the shelves, a worn leather jacket thrown over a chair, the kind of place someone actually called home. Sit, he ordered, guiding me to the couch with a hand on my lower back. Let me look at your shoulder properly. I sat. Let him peel away the torn fabric of my shirt, let his fingers probe the swelling with a gentleness that contradicted every violent thing I'd watched him do. His jaw was tight, his eyes dark as he cataloged the damage. It's healing, I said. Omega metabolism. I'll be fine in a few days. You should have been fine tonight. He disappeared into what I assumed was a bathroom, came back with a first aid kit. You should have been cleaning windows and going home and living your invisible life. Instead, you jumped 42 stories to save my nephew and got strangled for your trouble. Are you complaining? I'm saying the universe owes you a debt it can never repay. He knelt in front of me, started cleaning the wire burns on my throat with movements so careful I barely felt them. And so do I. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something in his expression shifted, went cold and focused in a way that made my wolf take notice. What is it? Kale. He's reviewed everything, the logs, the footage from other cameras that caught you working, witness statements from security who saw Vanessa disable the balcony feed. He met my eyes. You're cleared. Officially, publicly cleared of all suspicion. Relief hit me so hard I felt lightheaded. And Vanessa? Under guard. Kale's bringing Leo to meet us here. He wants Leo to tell his own story. Wants to hear it from him directly before he makes any moves against his wife. Dominic's expression darkened. And Vanessa's father has been notified. Silas Crow is coming. The name sent ice down my spine. Everyone knew Silas Crow, Alpha of the Northern Pack, one of the oldest and most powerful bloodlines in the region. Vanessa wasn't just some random wolf, she was pack royalty. And her father was the kind of alpha who went to war over insults, real or perceived. That's bad. I said. That's an understatement. Dominic finished bandaging my throat, his hands lingering on my skin. Silas will see this as an attack on his family. He'll demand restitution. He'll demand me. And he can demand whatever he wants. Dominic's voice went flat. Dangerous. He's not getting you. 20 minutes later, they arrived. Kyle Sterling looked like an older, harder version of Dominic. Same dark hair, same sharp features, but with an edge that came from decades of ruling wolves who would tear each other apart without a firm hand on the reins. He wore authority like a second skin, every movement deliberate, every word weighted with consequence. And beside him, small and fragile-looking in pajamas and a blanket, was Leo. The boy's eyes found me immediately. He tore away from his father and ran across the room, launching himself at me with a desperation that made my heart crack. Sage! His arms wrapped around my neck, his face buried against my shoulder. You're okay. Uncle Dom said you were okay, but I was scared. Hey. I held him close, mindful of my injuries but unable to do anything except give him the comfort he needed. I'm fine, sweetheart. Takes more than that to get rid of me. She pushed me. His voice came out muffled, shaking. Vanessa pushed me, and I thought I was going to die, and then you were there, and you caught me and... A sob choked him. I told Dad. I told him everything. You were so brave. I stroked his hair, looked up to meet Kale's eyes over Leo's head. He was so brave. Kale's expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes softened as he watched his son cling to the Omega who'd saved him. Leo told me what happened. All of it. The threats, the push, your jump. He moved closer, and the power rolling off him made my wolf want to submit, but I held his gaze. I owe you a debt I can never repay. You don't owe me anything. I just did what anyone would. Don't, Kale's voice cut through my deflection. Don't diminish what you did. You risked your life without hesitation for a child you didn't know. That's not something anyone would do. That's something extraordinary. I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to accept gratitude from an alpha who could crush me with a word, whose son was still holding on to me like I was his lifeline. Dominic moved to stand beside me, his hand settling on my shoulder in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. She's my mate. The words hung in the air. Kale's eyes sharpened, flicking between us, reading the bond that must have been obvious now that it was acknowledged. I see. Kale's tone gave nothing away. Does she know what that means? What she's walking into? I'm right here, I said before Dominic could answer, and I'm starting to understand. Kale studied me for another long moment, then nodded slowly. Then you should also understand that what's coming next will be... The apartment door slammed open. 5 wolves poured in security. Probably Kale's personal guard, and behind them came a man who radiated such raw power that the air itself seemed to thicken. Tall, silver-haired, with eyes like winter ice and a face carved from stone. Silas Crow in the flesh. And next to him, Vanessa. Perfectly composed despite being in custody, her expression a mask of wounded innocence. Kale. Silas's voice could have cut glass. I've come to collect my daughter and the Omega who attacked her. Leo's arms tightened around me. I felt Dominic shift, positioning himself between me and the newcomers, his wolf rising to the surface in response to the threat. Your daughter tried to murder my son, Kale said, his tone mild but his eyes promising death. The only thing you'll be collecting is her body if I decide to show mercy and make it quick. Vanessa made a sound of distress. Father, please, I've been set up. This Omega, she tried to abduct Leo, and when I stopped her, she spun this terrible story. Enough. Kale's power slammed through the room, making everyone except Dominic and Silas flinch. My son told me what happened. Security footage confirms the Omega was nowhere near the balcony before you disabled the cameras. Equipment logs show she jumped to catch Leo, not push him. Every piece of evidence says you're a liar and a murderer. Evidence can be falsified, Silas said coldly. My daughter would never... Your daughter is a psychopath who tried to eliminate a child she saw as competition for power. Dominic's voice cut through the tension like a blade. And now she sent an assassin after my mate. So yes, Silas, Let's talk about collection. How many pieces do you want Vanessa returned in? The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Silas's eyes locked on me, and the weight of his alpha presence was like a physical force trying to drive me to my knees. That Omega is your mate? Yes. An unmated, packless Omega of no status or bloodline. Silas's lip curled. You're willing to start a war over her? I'm willing to end one. Dominic moved, putting himself completely between me and Silas. She's mine. Under my protection, under my claim, bound by mate bond that you have no authority to question. Touch her and you touch me. Threaten her and you threaten House Sterling. Come for her. His eyes flashed gold. And you'll learn exactly why even you don't want me as an enemy. Bold words from a second son. Accurate words from a wolf who has nothing left to lose. Dominic smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. I've already killed one threat tonight. Don't tempt me to make it two. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension. Security hands went to weapons. Silas's wolves shifted into defensive positions. This was about to turn into a bloodbath in Dominic's living room, and Leo was still clinging to me, and I was too injured to fight, and Cale moved. He stepped between Dominic and Silas, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. This is how it's going to go. Vanessa will face trial under Sterling law for attempted murder. If found guilty, she'll be exiled from my territory permanently. Silas, you have 48 hours to accept those terms or reject them. If you reject them, consider it a declaration of war. You'd go to war over one child and a worthless Omega? I'd go to war over my son's life and my brother's mate. Yes. Cale's eyes were pure alpha, ancient and implacable. And before you calculate the odds, Silas, remember that House Sterling has held this city for 6 generations. We didn't do it by being weak. Silas's jaw clenched. His eyes swept the room, doing the math, Cale and Dominic together. The Sterling resources, the political allies who would have to choose sides. A war would be costly even if he won. I want the Omega prosecuted, Vanessa said desperately. She attacked me, father. She threatened me. Be silent. Silas didn't even look at his daughter. Cale, you're making a mistake. That Omega is a liability. She'll be targeted, used against you. Dominic's bond makes your family vulnerable. Dominic's bond makes our family stronger. Cale's tone brooked no argument. The Omega stays under our protection. That's not negotiable. The standoff stretched out, thick with the potential for violence. I could feel Dominic's wolf pushing at his control, ready to tear into anyone who moved wrong. Could feel Leo trembling against me. Could feel my own heart hammering against my ribs. Then Silas spoke. 48 hours. But know this, Cale. If my daughter is harmed, if she's humiliated, if one hair on her head is touched inappropriately during this trial, our packs will go to war regardless of your evidence. Understood. Cale's voice held no give. Take your wolves and leave my territory. The trial will commence at dawn in 2 days. Silas turned to go, his security falling in around him. Vanessa shot me a look of pure hatred as her father's hand closed around her arm, dragging her toward the door. This isn't over, Omega, she hissed. You think you've won? You've just painted a target on your back that will never come off. Already survived one assassin tonight, I said, my voice hoarse but steady. If you send another, make sure they're better than the last one. He died really fast. Vanessa's face twisted with rage, but Silas pulled her through the door before she could respond. The apartment felt like it could breathe again once they were gone. Cale turned to me. That was either very brave or very stupid. Little of both, probably. Something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes. Leo, come here. Leo reluctantly released me, going to his father but keeping his eyes on me like he was afraid I'd disappear. Sage will be staying with us until the trial, Cale said, his hand settling on Leo's head. She'll be protected, safe, and after, he glanced at Dominic. After, we'll discuss what comes next. She's my mate, Dominic said again, like he needed everyone to understand this wasn't temporary, wasn't negotiable. Whatever comes next, she's part of this family. Cale nodded slowly. Then she should know what that means. What you are. Dominic's expression went carefully blank. Kale, she has a right to know. Kale looked at me. My brother isn't just an alpha, Sage. He's Alpha Prime, one of maybe 6 wolves born in the last century with that level of power. It means his dominance can force even other alphas to submit. It means he's a weapon as much as he is a wolf. My breath caught. Alpha Prime. I'd heard the term, filed it away as myth or propaganda, but looking at Dominic now, seeing the way the air seemed to bend around him, the way even Kale, one of the most powerful alphas in the region, kept his distance, it clicked into place. That's why Silas backed down, I said. Not because of sterling resources, because going up against an Alpha Prime would be suicide. Partially, Kale agreed, but also because Dominic would actually do it. He'd burn the world down for you. That's what a mate bond means to a Prime. It's not just connection, it's obsession, possession, the kind of claiming that doesn't end until one of you is dead. He was trying to scare me, trying to give me an out before I got in too deep. But all I could think was that Dominic had killed for me tonight, had stood between me and war, had chosen me over duty, over family politics, over everything he'd been raised to value, and he'd do it again. I'm not afraid of him, I said quietly. Maybe you should be. Maybe. I looked at Dominic, saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he was waiting for me to run like everyone seemed to think I would. But I made him a promise. I don't break my promises. The relief that washed over Dominic's face was almost painful to witness. Kale studied us both, then sighed. Then I suppose all that's left is to prove it. Dominic, show her. Let her feel what you really are before she's too committed to back out. Kale, that's not necessary. It is. Kale's tone left no room for argument. Better she understands now than learns in the middle of the next crisis. Dominic looked at me, conflict written across his features. It's not pleasant. My dominance. It's not something I can fully control when I let it loose. It will hurt. Show me, I said. He hesitated another moment, then nodded. Leo, close your eyes. Kale, shield him. Kale moved, pulling Leo behind him, his own alpha power rising to create a barrier around his son. Then Dominic let go. The power that exploded from him wasn't like normal alpha dominance. That was pressure, weight, the sense of standing too close to something dangerous. This was a tidal wave, a hurricane, the kind of force that didn't just push it, obliterated. Every wolf in the apartment dropped to their knees. Kale's guards, seasoned warriors who'd probably survived a dozen battles, went down like puppets with cut strings. Even Kale grunted with the effort of keeping Leo protected, his own knees buckling slightly under the weight. The air itself felt heavy, like trying to breathe underwater. The windows rattled in their frames. Somewhere, glass cracked. And I stood. It hurt. God, it hurt. Like every cell in my body was screaming at me to submit, to roll over, to bare my throat and accept my place beneath him. My wolf was whimpering, caught between the desperate need to submit and something else, something that recognized him not as a threat but as mine. The mate bond flared between us, a lifeline in the crushing weight of his power. I used it, let it anchor me, let it remind me that this wasn't an enemy trying to dominate me. This was Dominic, my mate, the wolf who'd chosen me over everything else. I took a step forward, then another, walking through his alpha prime dominance like wading through chest-deep water, every movement a fight, every breath deliberate. But I kept moving until I was standing right in front of him. His eyes were pure gold, wild, barely controlled. I reached up and took his face in my hands. I see you, I whispered. All of you, the man, the alpha, the prime, the mate who killed for me. I see you, Dominic Sterling. And I'm not afraid. The dominance shattered, collapsed inward so fast I stumbled, would have fallen if Dominic hadn't caught me. His arms wrapped around me, his face buried in my hair, his whole body shaking with the effort of pulling his power back under control. You walked through it, he breathed against my skin. How did you walk through it? The bond. I held him just as tightly. I felt you through the bond, and I knew you'd never hurt me. Even when you were drowning me in power, I knew. Behind us, Kale's guards were slowly getting to their feet, looking at me with expressions that ranged from awe to fear. Kale himself was staring at us like he'd just witnessed something impossible. A bond strong enough to walk through prime dominance, he said quietly. I've never seen that before. Neither have I. Dominic pulled back just enough to look at me, and his eyes were brown again but filled with something that made my breath catch. You're not just my mate, Sage. You're my equal. The only wolf who can stand beside me when everyone else falls. Pretty sure I'm still just an Omega window cleaner. You're mine. He said it like a vow. My mate. My equal. My everything. And anyone who tries to take you from me, his expression went cold, will learn exactly what an Alpha Prime does to threats. I should have been terrified. Should have been running for the door. Instead, I kissed him. Hard and desperate and claiming, pouring everything I couldn't say into the press of lips and teeth and tongue. He growled low in his chest and kissed me back like he was starving, like I was air and water and everything he needed to survive. When we finally broke apart, I was dizzy and my throat was burning and I didn't care about any of it. So, I said breathlessly, what happens now? Dominic smiled fierce and possessive and entirely mine. Now we win. The trial was held in the Sterling Pack Hall, a massive space that hadn't seen use in years, all vaulted ceilings and stone walls that held the weight of generations. Pack law was old law, brutal and unforgiving, and as I walked through those doors with Dominic at my side, I understood that what was about to happen would be violent in ways that had nothing to do with blood. The hall was packed. Wolves from every major pack in the region had come to witness this, some out of genuine interest in justice, most because they wanted to see the powerful brought low. The air thrummed with barely restrained aggression, dozens of dominant wolves all crammed into one space, all watching as Dominic led me to a seat beside Kael's throne. Not in the audience, not in the back. Right there at the front, where everyone could see me, could scent the mate bond that marked me as his. A statement. This Omega belongs to me, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with my teeth. Whispers followed us. I felt the weight of every eye, heard the speculation and disdain and curiosity. An unmated Omega, packless, no status, sitting in a position of honor beside the Sterling Alpha. It went against everything their hierarchy was built on. Dominic's hand settled on my lower back, a small touch that steadied me. Through the bond, I felt his absolute certainty. He didn't care what they thought, didn't care if they approved. I was his, and that made me untouchable. Breathe, he murmured against my ear. You've already survived the hard part. This is just theater. Theater? Right, because watching a woman be stripped of everything in front of hundreds of witnesses was just a performance. But I breathed, straightened my spine, let them look. Kael entered last, and the whispers died instantly. He wore full formal regalia, black leather and silver, the marks of his station carved into every piece, but it was his presence that silenced the room. Pure alpha authority that made even the most dominant wolves drop their eyes. He took his throne, and his voice rang out clear and absolute. We gather under old law to render judgment on Vanessa Crowe Sterling, accused of attempted murder of an heir, conspiracy, and assault on a recognized mate bond. The evidence will be presented. The accused will speak. Then judgment will be rendered according to pack law. Let no wolf here question the validity of this trial. It wasn't a request. It was a command backed by the kind of power that could crush dissent before it formed. Silas sat in the front row, his face carved from stone, surrounded by his northern pack wolves. His eyes found mine, and the hatred in them was palpable. He blamed me for this, for his daughter's downfall, for the humiliation of having his bloodline questioned. I held his gaze until he looked away first. Small victory. I'd take it. They brought Vanessa in wearing restraints, silver chains that burned against wolfskin, keeping her subdued, keeping her human. She looked smaller somehow, less polished than she'd been 2 nights ago. But her eyes still blazed with defiance and rage. She saw me sitting beside Dominic, and something ugly twisted across her face. The evidence came first. Security footage from cameras she hadn't disabled, showing her working alone in the penthouse. Logs from the maintenance system showing she'd manually shut down the balcony feed. The equipment reports from my harness. The trajectory analysis that proved I'd jumped down to catch Leo, not up to grab him. Leo's testimony came next. Cale had him stay behind closed doors, but his voice played over speakers, small and frightened, and absolutely certain as he described Vanessa's threats. The push, the terror of falling, my arms catching him in the dark. "She saved me," his recorded voice said. "Sage saved me. Vanessa tried to kill me." The room erupted in snarls and growls. Even wolves who'd come skeptical couldn't argue with a child's testimony, backed by incontrovertible evidence. Vanessa tried to defend herself, spun a story about misunderstandings and misinterpretations, about me being obsessed with Leo, about how she'd only been trying to protect him from an Omega's dangerous fixation. No one believed her. You could see it in their faces the moment the pack turned against her. Not because they cared about me, or even particularly about Leo, but because she'd broken the most sacred rule of pack law. She'd threatened a child, an heir, the future of the bloodline. That was unforgivable. Cale let her talk herself in circles for 20 minutes before cutting her off mid-sentence. "Enough." His voice cracked through the hall like a whip. "I've heard the evidence. I've heard your denials. The pack has witnessed both. Now comes judgment." He rose from his throne, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. This was the moment, the point where mercy might be offered, or absolute justice delivered. "Vanessa Crowe Sterling, you have been found guilty of attempted murder, conspiracy, and crimes against this pack's future. By the old laws, the laws you swore to uphold when you took the Luna title, you have forfeited your place among us." Vanessa's face went white. "Cale, please. I'm your wife. I gave up everything to. You gave up nothing." His eyes were merciless. "You married me for power and killed my mate for access to it. You wore the Luna title like a costume and used it to hide your rot. And when my son stood between you and complete control," his voice went cold enough to burn, "you tried to murder a 7-year-old child. It wasn't like that." Silence. The command hit with physical force, making Vanessa's jaw snap shut. "I strip you of your Luna title. I strip you of your place in this pack. And by the power vested in me as Alpha, I strip you of your wolf." The room went deathly quiet. Stripping a wolf was the ultimate punishment. It meant taking the animal, the instinct, the very thing that made you supernatural, and ripping it away, leaving you human, powerless, empty. It was a fate worse than death. Vanessa's scream when Cale's power hit her was inhuman. She collapsed to her knees, hands clawing at her chest like she could hold her wolf inside, keep it from being torn away. But there was no fighting an Alpha's judgment, especially not one as old and powerful as Cale Sterling. I watched her wolf die, watched the light of it fade from her eyes, leaving them dull and human and broken. Watched her slump forward, gasping, sobbing, reaching for something that no longer existed inside her. Part of me, the Omega part that had been invisible and powerless for so long, wanted to feel satisfaction, wanted to gloat, wanted to stand over her and say, "See what happens when you try to hurt people I care about." But looking at her crumpled on the floor, stripped of everything that made her who she was, I felt nothing but exhaustion. This wasn't victory. This was just survival. "Vanessa Crowe," Cale continued, and his voice was empty of emotion now. "You are hereby exiled from Sterling territory. You will be escorted to the border and released. If you return, if you contact any member of this pack, if you so much as think about revenge, you will be executed. This is my final mercy. Do not test it." Silas rose from his seat. For a moment, I thought he might challenge the ruling, might demand his daughter back, might start the war he'd threatened. Instead, he looked at Vanessa, really looked at her, at what she'd become, and something in his expression shut down. "The Crow Pack does not shelter the wolfless," he said. his voice carrying across the hall. My daughter broke sacred law. She has earned her fate. I will not contest this ruling. Vanessa's head snapped up. Father, you are no daughter of mine. Silas turned his back on her. You are nothing. And just like that, she had nothing. No pack, no family, no wolf, no future. Guards came forward, hauled her to her feet. She didn't fight, just sobbed brokenly as they dragged her toward the doors, toward exile, toward a life she'd never wanted and would never escape. She passed within feet of where I sat. Her eyes found mine one last time. This is your fault, she whispered. All of it. You should have just died when you fell. But I didn't, I said quietly. I survived. That's what Omegas do, we survive. They took her away. The doors closed behind her with a finality that echoed through the hall. Kale returned to his throne, and when he spoke again, his voice had lost its edge. This trial is concluded. Justice has been rendered according to the old laws. Let no wolf question what happened here today. The pack responded with howls not of grief or anger, but of acceptance. The law had been upheld, the threat eliminated, order restored. Dominic's hand found mine, his fingers lacing through mine in a grip that said mine. Safe, protected. How do you feel? He asked softly. Tired, I admitted. Empty, like I should feel something more than this. You feel appropriate things. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand. She tried to kill you, tried to kill Leo. You're allowed to be relieved. She's gone without celebrating her destruction. Is that what you feel? No. His eyes met mine, dark and honest. I feel satisfied. She hurt what's mine. She threatened my nephew. She's lucky Kale stripped her wolf instead of letting me tear her throat out. The casual violence in his voice should have bothered me. Instead, it just felt like truth, raw and unvarnished. We should probably work on your conflict resolution skills, I said. He smiled, sharp and dangerous and entirely unrepentant. Probably, but not today. Silas approached then, and Dominic immediately shifted, putting himself partially between me and the Northern Alpha, protective without being obvious about it. Sterling, Silas's voice was carefully neutral. Your brother rendered fair judgment. The Crow Pack acknowledges this. Good. Kale descended from his throne, every inch the Alpha who'd just proven why his family had held power for generations. Then we have no quarrel. We don't. Silas's eyes flicked to me, lingered for a moment that made my wolf bristle, though I confess curiosity about the Omega who managed to bring down my daughter. Sage didn't bring down your daughter, Dominic said, his voice gone cold. Your daughter brought herself down by trying to murder a child. Sage just refused to let her get away with it. An Omega who jumps 42 stories to save an Alpha heir. Silas tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. An Omega who walks through prime dominance. An Omega who sits at the right hand of power without flinching. He smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. You're either very stupid or very dangerous, girl. I haven't decided which. Maybe both, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the urge to hide behind Dominic. I've been told I have poor survival instincts. Something that might have been respect flickered across Silas's face. Perhaps. Or perhaps you have better instincts than any of us realized. He nodded to Kale. We'll take our leave. But know this, the Crow Pack remembers debts, both owed and paid. What happened here today, it's not forgotten. Are you threatening my mate? Dominic's voice dropped to something barely above a growl. I'm stating fact. Silas met his eyes without flinching. Your Omega made an enemy today, Prime. My daughter may be exiled and wolfless, but she has allies. Wolves who believe an Omega should never rise above her station. They'll come for her. Let them. Dominic's smile was all teeth. I killed the last threat. I'll kill the next 100 if I have to. I believe you would. Silas turned to leave, paused at the door. Train her well, Prime. She'll need to know how to fight if she's going to survive what comes next. Then he was gone, his wolves flowing out behind him like a tide of muscle and menace. The hall began to empty. Wolves filtering out in small groups, still murmuring about what they'd witnessed. I watched them go, and tried not to think about Silas's warning. about the enemies I'd apparently made just by refusing to die quietly. He's right, you know. I looked up at Dominic. I don't know how to fight. Don't know pack politics. Don't know how to be what you need me to be. You're already what I need you to be. He pulled me to my feet, his hands framing my face with a gentleness that contradicted every violent thing I'd seen him do. Strong, brave, mine, everything else, the fighting, the politics, the navigating pack hierarchy we'll figure out together. Together. I tested the word, still not quite believing it applied to me. I've never been part of a together before. Get used to it. He pressed his forehead to mine, his breath warm against my lips. Because you're stuck with me now, Omega. For better or worse. Through politics and assassination attempts and whatever else the universe wants to throw at us. That's a terrible sales pitch. It's an honest one. His lips curved against mine. I could promise you easy. Could tell you that being my mate will be all protection and privilege and no consequences. But you'd see through the lie in seconds. So what are you promising? Truth. His eyes met mine, gold flickering in their depths. I promise I'll always tell you the truth, even when it's ugly. I promise I'll protect you with everything I have, even when it costs me. I promise I'll never ask you to be smaller or quieter or more invisible than you choose to be. His hands tightened on my face. And I promise that anyone who threatens you will learn exactly what happens when you come for an Alpha Prime's mate. My throat tightened. That's still a lot of violence. I know. He didn't apologize for it, but it's who I am, what I am. And if you can't accept that, I accept it. The words came out steady, certain. I saw you kill for me, saw you stand between me and war, saw you choose me over duty and family politics and everything you were raised to value. I'd be an idiot not to accept who you are after that. Relief washed across his face, so raw it made my chest ache. You're sure? Because once we do this, once I claim you properly, once the bond is fully acknowledged, there's no going back. You'll be mine in every way that matters, and He swallowed hard. I don't know how to be gentle with things I care about. Don't know how to not be possessive and overbearing and too much. Good thing I've never wanted gentle. I rose up on my toes, pressed my lips to his in a kiss that was soft and claiming all at once. I want real. I want honest. I want you, Dominic Sterling. All of you. The Alpha, the Prime, the male who kills without hesitation, and holds me like I'm something precious in the same breath. He kissed me back hard enough to steal my breath, deep enough to make my toes curl, thorough enough that when we finally broke apart I was dizzy and clinging to his shoulders for balance. Mine, he growled against my lips. Yours, I agreed. And somewhere in the empty hall, surrounded by the weight of pack law and old magic, the bond between us flared bright and absolute, no longer rejected, no longer denied, just acknowledged for what it was. Fate, destiny, home. Whatever came next, enemies or politics, or the dozen other threats Silas had hinted at, we'd face it together. And God help anyone who tried to break us. 1 month after the trial, I woke up in Dominic's bed for the 30th time and finally believed it might be permanent. The penthouse had stopped feeling like a safe house and started feeling like home somewhere around day 12, when I'd rearranged his kitchen to make actual sense, and he'd watched me do it with this expression like I'd just performed magic. By day 20, I had my own shelf in the bathroom, my own side of the closet, my own coffee mug that Dominic would growl at anyone else who tried to use. Small things, domestic things, the kind of normalcy I'd never expected to have with an Alpha Prime who could level a room with his presence. But that was the thing about Dominic away from pack politics and threats and trials. He was just him. The male who made me breakfast even though he couldn't cook worth a damn. Who listened to me talk about window cleaning techniques like they were the most fascinating things he'd ever heard. Who held me through nightmares where I was falling and never hit the ground because he always caught me. The shoulder had healed. The bruises on my throat had faded. The physical damage from that night was mostly gone. The rest, learning to accept being seen, learning to take up space, learning that I deserved to be here, that was taking longer. You're thinking too loud. Dominic's voice came from behind me, rough with sleep. His arm tightened around my waist, pulling me back against his chest. I can practically hear the anxiety. I'm not anxious. You're a terrible liar. He pressed a kiss to the back of my neck, right over the mark he'd left there a week ago, not a claiming bite yet, but close enough that everyone who saw it knew exactly what I was to him. Talk to me. I traced patterns on his forearm, buying time to organize my thoughts. Today's the pack gathering. I'm aware. Your entire pack is going to see you formally acknowledge me as your mate. Also aware. Some of them are going to hate it. Hate me. Think I'm not good enough for you. Definitely aware. He rolled me onto my back so he could look at me properly, his weight settling over me in a way that was both comforting and distracting. And the part where you care what they think because you care about them. Because pack approval matters, whether you want to admit it or not. You know what matters more than pack approval? His hand slid up my ribs, thumb brushing just under my breast in a way that made my breath catch. You. Us. The fact that you're mine and I'm yours, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with my wolf. That's not a political strategy. No, it's not. He smiled sharp and unapologetic. It's the truth. I stopped playing politics the moment I felt you dying through the bond. Everything else is just noise. He made it sound simple. Like choosing me over centuries of pack hierarchy and tradition was easy. But I could feel the tension in him. Could sense through the bond that he was more worried about today than he was letting on. Not because he doubted me, but because he knew exactly how ugly pack politics could get, and he was prepared to burn bridges to protect me. What if... I started. He kissed me, deep and thorough and possessive, his tongue sliding against mine until I forgot what I was going to say, forgot everything except the taste of him and the weight of him, and the way my body responded like it had been designed specifically for his touch. When he finally pulled back, I was breathless and flushed and completely distracted from my anxiety. Manipulation, I managed. Effective manipulation, he corrected. Now get up. We have 3 hours before the gathering and I'm taking you out for breakfast. Out? Out. He rolled off me, started pulling on clothes with efficient movements. There's a cafe 2 blocks away that makes coffee that'll ruin you for the instant stuff you used to drink, and I want to watch you try their chocolate croissants. You're being weird. I'm being a wolf who wants to take his mate out in public and show her off. He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. Unless you don't want... I want. I sat up, wrapped the sheet around myself. I'm not used to this, to someone wanting to be seen with me. His expression went soft in a way that made my chest tight. Get used to it, Omega, because I plan on being seen with you for the rest of our lives. The cafe was exactly the kind of place I would have been too intimidated to enter a month ago. All exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows, filled with wolves who looked like they belonged in fashion magazines. The kind of establishment where an Omega window cleaner would have been immediately clocked as out of place. But I wasn't walking in alone anymore. Dominic's hand was firm on my lower back as we entered, his presence a shield that made the other customers immediately drop their eyes. We got a table by the window prime real estate, and I tried not to notice how many wolves were staring. Ignore them, Dominic said, not bothering to lower his voice. They're just curious about the Omega who survived an assassination and walked through prime dominance like it was a light breeze. You make me sound way more impressive than I actually am. I make you sound exactly as impressive as you are. He flagged down a server, ordered coffee and croissants without asking what I wanted, and somehow got my preferences exactly right. The food was ridiculous. Buttery and flaky and so good I might have made an embarrassing sound on the first bite. Dominic's eyes heated. Do that again and we're leaving. Immediately. Possessive alpha. You're possessive alpha. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with an intensity that made my skin warm. And before you argue about whether you deserve croissants or public breakfast dates or any of the other things you're going to try to minimize, stop. You deserve all of it. You deserve more than I can give you. And I'm going to spend the rest of our lives trying anyway. My throat went tight. You're really bad at casual breakfast conversation. I'm really good at making sure you understand your value. He reached across the table, laced his fingers through mine. Because you're still fighting it. Still looking around like you're waiting for someone to tell you this is a mistake, that you don't belong here, that… There you are. The voice came from behind me, male, smooth, carrying the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. I felt Dominic's entire body go rigid, his wolf pressing forward in a way that made the air around us thicken. I turned to find an alpha standing behind my chair. Tall, blonde, handsome in a way that was probably carefully maintained. His eyes raked over me with an appreciation that made my skin crawl. "You're the Omega everyone's talking about," he said, like Dominic wasn't sitting right there. The window cleaner who caught the sterling air. "I'm Marcus. Leave." Dominic's voice came out flat, deadly. Marcus's smile faltered. "I was just introducing myself to my mate, without permission, while she's having breakfast, with me." Dominic stood in one fluid motion, and suddenly the charming cafe atmosphere felt dangerous. "So I'm going to say this once. Leave or I'm going to break every bone in your hand for touching her chair." I hadn't even noticed Marcus's hand on the back of my seat, but Dominic was tracking it like a threat, his wolf seconds away from doing exactly what he'd promised. Marcus pulled his hand back like he'd been burned. "I didn't mean any disrespect. You disrespected her by assuming you had the right to approach her. You disrespected me by ignoring the mate bond you could clearly scent. And you're currently disrespecting my patience by still being here." Dominic's eyes flashed gold. "Move." Marcus moved. Practically ran out of the cafe, and I couldn't blame him. The threat rolling off Dominic was palpable, making every other wolf in the establishment suddenly very interested in their food. Dominic sat back down, picked up his coffee like nothing had happened. "Where were we?" "You just threatened to break someone's hand for saying hello to me." "I threatened to break someone's hand for touching your chair without permission." He said it like there was a meaningful difference. "There's a hierarchy to these things. You're insane. I'm yours." He met my eyes over the rim of his cup. "And I don't share, ever." The possessiveness should have annoyed me, should have triggered every independent instinct I had. Instead, it just made me feel safe, claimed, like I was worth protecting, worth that level of territorial aggression. "I'm not going anywhere," I said quietly. "Good." He set down his cup, leaned forward. "Because I meant what I said earlier. You're it for me, Sage. The only Omega I'll ever want. The only wolf who could stand beside me without being crushed. The only person I trust with the parts of me I don't show anyone else." That's a lot of pressure. That's the truth. His hand found mine again. "And before you spiral about whether you're ready for it, whether you deserve it, whether you can handle what comes with being mated to a prime, let me save you the time. You're already handling it. You've been handling it since the moment you jumped off a platform to save Leo. Everything since then has just been you learning to accept what you've always been. Extraordinary." I had to look away, blinking against the sudden burn in my eyes. "You're really good at this." "At what?" "Making me believe I'm worth keeping." The pain that flashed across his face was visceral. "Sage, I know." I squeezed his hand. "I know you see me differently than I see myself. I know you think I'm brave and strong and all these things I never thought I was. And I'm trying, I swear, I'm trying to believe it too. Then believe this." He stood, came around the table, and pulled me to my feet. Right there in the middle of the cafe, with dozens of wolves watching, he kissed me, slow and deep and claiming, his hands in my hair, his body pressed against mine like he was trying to eliminate any space between us. When he pulled back, every wolf in the cafe was carefully not looking at us. "I love you," he said, loud enough for them all to hear. "I love you, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not hiding it. I'm not pretending you're anything other than what you are, mine, and perfect exactly as you are." My heart stuttered. We hadn't said those words yet, had danced around them, implied them, felt them through the bond, but hearing them out loud, in public, with witnesses, "I love you too," I whispered. "Even when you're being an overbearing, possessive, slightly unhinged alpha." His smile could have lit up the city, especially then. We left the cafe hand in hand, and I didn't miss the way every wolf we passed gave us a wide berth. Showing respect or showing fear, I couldn't tell. Maybe both. The pack gathering was held in Sterling territory, in the same hall where Vanessa's trial had taken place. But today the atmosphere was completely different, celebratory instead of tense, filled with the sound of conversation and laughter instead of barely restrained violence. Still terrifying. Hundreds of wolves, all dressed in their finest, all there to witness Dominic formally acknowledge me as his mate and future Luna. My stomach twisted as we approached the entrance, my old instincts screaming at me to run, to hide, to go back to being invisible where it was safe. Dominic must have felt my panic through the bond because he stopped, turned to face me fully. "Look at me." He waited until my eyes met his. "You don't have to do this. If you're not ready, if this is too much, we can wait. I'll announce the mate bond without the Luna ceremony. No." I straightened my spine, forced my breathing to steady. "I'm ready. I'm just scared." "Of what?" "Of disappointing you. Of not being what they need. Of—" I swallowed hard. "Of them seeing what I see when I look in the mirror and deciding I'm not enough. You know what I see when I look at you?" He cupped my face, thumbs brushing away tears I hadn't realized had fallen. "I see the bravest wolf I've ever met. I see someone who jumped into danger without thinking twice. I see someone who walked through prime dominance because the bond between us was stronger than fear. I see my mate, my equal, my Luna." His expression went fierce. "And anyone who sees anything less than that isn't worth your concern. What if they challenge me? Then I'll handle it. Simple. Absolute. But Sage, they won't. Because the moment you walk in there, they're going to feel what I feel through the bond. They're going to see how you stand, how you move, how you look at me like you're my equal instead of my subordinate. And they're going to understand that you're not some weak omega I'm protecting out of obligation." He leaned in, pressed his forehead to mine. "You're the strongest wolf in this territory outside of Kale and me. You just haven't realized it yet." I wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways I was still weak, still learning, still fumbling through pack politics like a child. But looking into his eyes, feeling the absolute certainty through our bond, I couldn't. He believed it. Completely. Maybe it was time I started believing it too. "Okay," I breathed. "Let's do this." The doors opened, and we walked in together. The hall fell silent as we entered. Every eye turned toward us, tracking our progress down the center aisle toward where Kyle stood waiting. I felt the weight of their attention, their curiosity, their judgment. But Dominic's hand was steady in mine, and through the bond I could feel his pride, his love, his absolute conviction that I belonged here. We reached the dais. Kale stood in full ceremonial regalia, and beside him, Leo. The boy was dressed like a tiny alpha, all formal clothes and serious expression. But when he saw me, his face split into a grin and he launched himself off the platform straight into my arms. "Sage." He buried his face against my neck. "You look pretty. You look very handsome," I murmured back, holding him tight. "Like a proper alpha. Dad says you're going to be my Luna now. Is that true?" I looked up, met Kale's eyes. He nodded once, and something in my chest loosened. "Yeah, sweetheart. If the pack accepts me, I'll be your Luna." "They'll accept you," Leo said with complete certainty. "You saved me. You're the bravest person I know." Out of the mouths of children. I set him down, and he took his place beside his father, standing tall and proud like he was part of this ceremony instead of just a witness. Kale's voice rang out across the hall. "We gather today to witness the formal acknowledgement of a mate bond. Dominic Sterling, Alpha Prime of House Sterling, has chosen his mate. He brings her before us to be recognized, to be accepted, to be honored as Luna." The formal words felt heavy, weighted with tradition and power. I forced myself to stand straight, to meet the eyes of the wolves staring at us. "Sage," Kale continued, and hearing my name in that formal context made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "You stand before this pack having proven your courage, your loyalty, and your strength. You saved an heir without thought for your own life. You faced trial with dignity. You walked through prime dominance and survived. He paused. The question now is simple. Will you accept the responsibility of Luna? Will you stand beside Dominic as his equal, his partner, his mate in all things? My throat was tight. I will. Will you protect this pack as fiercely as you protected my son? I will. Will you face our enemies without flinching, lead without arrogance, and love without reservation? I glanced at Dominic. His eyes were gold, his wolf right at the surface, and through the bond I felt his absolute faith in me. I will, I said, stronger this time. Cale smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him. Then by the power vested in me as Alpha of House Sterling, I recognize you as Luna, Dominic's mate, our family. He looked out at the assembled wolves. Who stands against this? Silence. Not hesitant silence. Absolute silence. Because somewhere during my answer, Dominic had let his prime dominance bleed into the room, not crushing, just present. A reminder of exactly what he was, what he was capable of, what would happen to anyone who challenged his choice. Then it's done. Cale gestured for us to turn and face the pack. I present to you Sage Sterling, Luna of House Sterling, mate to Alpha Prime Dominic Sterling. Honor her as you honor him. Protect her as you protect your family. And know that any threat to her is a threat to us all. The pack bowed. Every single wolf in that hall, alphas and betas and omegas alike, dropped to one knee and bowed their heads in a gesture of absolute submission and respect. For me, for the omega who'd spent her whole life being invisible. My vision blurred. Dominic's arm wrapped around my waist, holding me steady while I tried to process what was happening. They accept you, he murmured against my ear. They see you. They honor you. I don't know what to do. You don't have to do anything. Just be exactly who you are. He pressed a kiss to my temple. My Luna, my love, my everything. And standing there in front of hundreds of wolves, all of them bowing to acknowledge my place, I finally let myself believe it. I wasn't nobody anymore. I was seen. I was valued. I was home. I was his. And he was mine. Luna. The word settled over me like a crown I never asked for but was learning to wear. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to hide from what I was becoming. I felt ready to embrace it. The gathering lasted hours. Wolves approached in careful groups to offer congratulations, to acknowledge the bond, to size me up with varying degrees of skepticism and acceptance. I smiled until my face hurt, shook hands until my fingers ached, and tried not to let the exhaustion show. Dominic never left my side. His hand stayed on my back, my waist, my shoulder, constant contact that said mine to anyone watching. And when a few of the older alphas got too familiar, too presumptuous with their questions about my bloodline or lack thereof, his presence alone was enough to shut them down. But it was Leo who stole the show. He stayed close, introducing me to wolves with the kind of pride usually reserved for showing off a trophy. This is Sage. She's my Luna now. She saved my life. She's the bravest wolf in the whole pack. No one argued with him. How could they? A 7-year-old heir declaring an Omega worthy carried more weight than any political maneuvering. By the time the gathering finally ended, the sun was setting and my feet were killing me from the heels Dominic had insisted I didn't need to wear. But I'd worn anyway because some part of me still felt like I needed armor for these situations. Come with me, Dominic said quietly, his hand slipping into mine as the last of the guests filtered out. Where? You'll see. He led me through the hall, past security who nodded respectfully, into an elevator that required a special key. The numbers climbed past the residential floors, past the corporate levels, all the way to the top, the penthouse level, but not his penthouse. The Sterling family penthouse, where Leo lived with Cale, where Vanessa had once ruled as Luna before everything came crashing down. My steps slowed. Dominic, trust me. The elevator opened directly into the space. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of Dominic's place, all soaring ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the entire city sprawling below. But it wasn't the luxury that made my breath catch. It was the balcony, the same balcony where Leo had almost died, where I'd jumped without thinking, where everything had started. Dominic must have felt my hesitation through the bond because he squeezed my hand. Kale's remodeling this entire level. Fresh start. But I asked him if we could come up here first, if you're okay with that. I looked at the balcony doors, at the space beyond them, and something in my chest settled. This place didn't scare me. It was where I'd found my purpose, where I'd stopped being invisible. I'm okay with it. We walked out together onto the balcony. The wind was gentler tonight, carrying the scent of the city exhaust and food and 1,000 different lives being lived. The platform I'd worked from was long gone, the safety equipment cleared away, but I could still see in my mind where I'd hung, where I'd heard voices, where I'd made the choice that changed everything. You know what I think about when I come up here? Dominic said, standing at the railing where Leo had gone over. I think about how close we came to losing him. How if you'd been assigned to a different building that night, if your shift had ended 10 minutes earlier, if you'd decided it was too windy to work, his voice roughened, he'd be dead. And I never would have met you. You would have met me eventually. The mate bond might never have snapped into place. He turned to face me fully. Bonds don't always manifest, Sage. Sometimes mates go their whole lives never knowing what they could have had because the timing was wrong or they were too proud or fate just didn't align. We got lucky. Cosmically, impossibly lucky that you were in the right place at the right moment. I don't feel lucky. I feel like I struggled for the words. Like everything I went through, the invisibility, the loneliness, the years of just surviving it was all leading to that moment. Like maybe I had to learn to be invisible so I'd be there when someone needed to be seen. His hands came up to frame my face, thumbs brushing my cheekbones with devastating gentleness. You were always meant to be seen. I'm just grateful I'm the one who gets to do it. The city lights sparkled below us, a million tiny fires against the darkness. Up here, above it all, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. Dominic took a breath, and I felt nervousness flutter through the bond. Actual nervousness from a wolf who'd killed for me without hesitation, who'd faced down other alphas without flinching. I need to ask you something, he said. My heart kicked into a faster rhythm. Okay, and I need you to know that you can say no. That I'll understand if you're not ready, if this is too fast, if you need more time to… Dominic. I pressed my fingers to his lips, stopping the spiral. Ask. He caught my hand, pressed a kiss to my palm, my wrist, the inside of my elbow where my pulse hammered against skin. Then he let go and didn't kneel. He stood in front of me as an equal. No power play, no dominance, just him and me and the question hanging between us. Marry me, he said. Not a command, not a demand, a request. Not because pack law says you're already mine, not because the bond makes us mates, but because I love you, because I want to stand in front of witnesses and vow to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt your worth again. Because I want to wake up next to you for the next 60 years and still find new ways to show you that you're extraordinary. My throat closed up. That's not a question. You're right. A smile ghosted across his lips. Sage, love of my life, bravest wolf I've ever known, pain in my ass when you argue with me about deserving good things, will you marry me? I should have said yes immediately. Should have thrown myself into his arms and sealed the deal with a kiss that made the city below us irrelevant. Instead, I heard myself say, "Why?" He blinked. "I just told you why." "No, I mean…" I struggled to articulate the fear still lurking in my chest. "Why me? You're an Alpha Prime. You could have anyone. Someone with a bloodline, with connections, with training in pack politics and combat and all the things I don't know. Someone who wouldn't need protecting, wouldn't be a liability, wouldn't make your life more complicated just by existing." The words tumbled out faster. "I'm nobody, Dominic. A window cleaner who got lucky. And I keep waiting for you to wake up and realize you made a mistake." The pain that crossed his face was visceral. "Sage, I love you," I said quickly. "God, I love you so much it scares me. But I need to understand why you'd choose this. Choose me. When you could have…" He kissed me. hard and desperate and thorough, his hands in my hair, his body pressed against mine like he was trying to eliminate every inch of space between us. When he pulled back, his eyes were pure gold, and his wolf was riding right at the surface. "You want to know why you?" His voice came out rough, barely controlled. "Because you jumped. Because when a child was falling and every instinct should have told you to protect yourself, you jumped anyway. Because you walked through prime dominance without submitting. Because you told me the truth even when you knew I didn't want to hear it. Because you looked at me, at all of me, the violence and the possessiveness and the parts I keep hidden, and you didn't flinch." His forehead pressed against mine, his breath coming fast. "Because you make me laugh. Because you reorganize my kitchen and argue about coffee and steal my shirts to sleep in. Because you're kind to Leo and patient with Kale, and you didn't gloat when Vanessa fell. Because you're exactly as strong as you need to be, and exactly as soft as you want to be, and you never apologize for either." His hands tightened in my hair. "Because I look at you and see home, see forever, see the only wolf I'll ever want standing beside me." Tears were streaming down my face now. "I'm still scared." "Good." He smiled through his own tears. "I'm terrified. Because loving you this much, needing you this much, it's the only thing that could bring an Alpha Prime to his knees. You have more power over me than anyone alive, Sage. And you're scared of not being enough?" He laughed, raw and broken. "You're everything. You're too much. You're mine and I'm yours. And I will spend every day for the rest of our lives proving that you deserve all of it." I couldn't speak, could only stare at him through tears and love, and the bone-deep certainty that this was real, this was happening, this was mine to keep. "So, I'm asking again." He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes. "Will you marry me? Will you let me stand in front of the world and claim you as my wife, my mate, my Luna, my everything? Will you trust that I see you clearly and love exactly what I see?" The word came out as a whisper. "Yes." His smile could have lit up the whole city. "Yes?" "Yes." Louder now, more certain. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I trust you. Yes, to all of it." He kissed me again, and this time it wasn't desperate or urgent. It was reverent. A claiming that had nothing to do with dominance and everything to do with choice. We chose this. Chose each other. Chose to believe that an Alpha Prime and an Omega window cleaner could build something extraordinary together. When we finally broke apart, both of us were crying and laughing and holding on to each other like we were the only solid things in a shifting world. "I don't have a ring," he said against my lips. "I was going to get one, had it all planned out, but then today happened and I couldn't wait anymore. I don't need a ring." I traced his face with trembling fingers. "I just need you. You have me." He caught my hand, pressed it against his chest where his heart was racing. "Every broken, violent, possessive part of me. It's all yours. Then I'm the richest wolf alive." We stood there on the balcony as the city lights flickered on below us, as the sky deepened from purple to black, as the world kept spinning without caring that everything had just changed for us. And I thought about the Omega I'd been a month ago. Invisible, alone, surviving but not living. I thought about the jump that had changed everything, the bond that had saved me, the male who'd looked at me and seen worth when I couldn't see it myself. I didn't rise because he saved me. I rose because he saw me, because he'd looked at an Omega hanging from a window and recognized strength, because he'd felt me through the bond and chosen me over duty, because he'd stood between me and war and never once suggested I should make myself smaller to keep the peace. He'd seen me, all of me, the fear and the courage, the strength and the vulnerability, the Omega who'd learned to be invisible and the Luna who was learning to command a room. And he'd loved every version. "What are you thinking?" Dominic asked softly. "I'm thinking..." I looked up at him, this Alpha Prime who'd given me everything, including the freedom to choose him back. "I'm thinking I spent so long trying to be invisible because I thought that was how I survived. But maybe I was just waiting. For you. For this. For the moment when being seen wouldn't feel like a death sentence, but like coming home." His arms tightened around me. "You are home. With me. With our pack. With the family we're building. He pressed a kiss to my forehead. And I promise you, you will never be invisible again. Not to me, not to Leo, not to anyone who matters. Good. I smiled against his chest. Because I'm done hiding. Thank God. His voice held laughter and relief and love. Because watching you command a room full of alphas today was the hottest thing I've ever seen. Possessive alpha. You're possessive alpha. He corrected automatically. Your fiancé. Your future husband. Your mate in every way that counts. The words settled over me like a benediction, like a promise, like the beginning of something I'd stopped believing in years ago. A future that wasn't just survival, but actual living. Take me home, I whispered. Already there, love. But he understood what I meant. He laced his fingers through mine, and together we walked off that balcony, away from the place where everything had started, toward whatever came next. The elevator descended, the city sprawled below us, and I thought about fate and choice, and the beautiful, terrifying fact that sometimes the two were the same thing. I'd chosen to jump, he'd chosen to catch me, and now we were choosing forever. Luna, mate, wife. The titles didn't make me who I was, but standing beside Dominic Sterling, his hand in mine, his love wrapping around me like armor and sanctuary both, that made me whole. We stepped out into the night, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of being seen. I was ready to shine. The end. Thank you for listening to another emotional, magical shifter romance here on Tina Romance Library. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, so you never miss more powerful, heart-gripping romance stories.